let me start. The first part is I would like to take you through our agenda and explain quickly to you what you will hear and learn in that webinar. First of all, of course, the presentation, and for our latecomer, we are going to record the presentation, as you can see on the red dot, but all personal information will be cut out before we present or before we upload that to our slide. So also including all questions. So don't hesitate to raise questions. Then we would like to introduce ourselves, Klaus and myself. That is the next step. Then introduce the people workstream. What's the people workstream? Why do we have in Zero Outage Industry Standard a people workstream? Then what does the people workstream talk about? The competency model. Klaus will take you through that. Then the different competencies as we see them in the competency model. And then as last point, the organizational environment. And then after that, we are going to inform you what will come after that webinar. So my name is Michael Mayr. I'm working for Hitachi Vantara. Hitachi Vantara is part of the Hitachi Group. I'm client director, responsible for service quality for our biggest customers worldwide. So I'm actually responsible for everything what comes after the sales process is closed, so to say. Hitachi was founded 1910. Since 60 years, we marry OT, so operational technology and informational technology. We are developing intelligent platforms, hybrid cloud infrastructure, digital consultants, and we also develop resilient digital processes and products. What brings me to Zero Outage? I mean, I work or I run customer support environments for the bigger part of my professional life. And in that time, I have learned that people are the most critical part, the most important, but also the most critical part of the IT value chain. And what I have also learned is that this is the area where we put the least evidence-based methods. And I'm passionate to help change that also in the IT environment, because other industries are already there. Right, Klaus, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Right, my name is Klaus Reile. I'll take a slightly different approach to how Michael did. I'll tell you what I did first. So I grew up in South Africa. I started my career there as a technical engineer in the point of sale in the banking sector and industry. And it was early on during my career when I was first confronted with the term "always on." Might ring a bell for some of you, and the expectations that go with that from our customers. And I think one of the biggest learnings at the time for me was to see how different people's mindsets, due to cultural backgrounds and different levels of experience, how that affected the way that they worked in these zero outage or always on environments. And the biggest challenge at the time, was to get all these people to think and act in the same way when they work in these environments. Today, I work for Netapp. Netapp is a US headquartered software company, and we help customers manage their applications across hybrid cloud environments. Basically, a company that has transformed itself from a classic storage company into a cloud and a multi-cloud software and application management company. I myself am based in Germany, from where I lead a team of various teams of support account managers, whose primary function it is to help and guide our customers proactively so that we can avoid outages altogether. Just maybe want to add that Michael and I have been part of this workstream from day one, or from Zero Outage from day one. Both Hitachi and Netapp are founding members of the industry standard, and together with Michael, I and him together, we lead the people workstream, and so that's where we're going to be talking to you guys on some of the stuff today. So, we, and if I refer to we, I'd say Zero Outage work very closely with big multinationals, huge successful companies across the spectrum. So this is not limited to IT, it's just across the spectrum, right? And we look how they approach the always on or the zero outage topic within their organizations or their companies. And by getting all of these big companies in, sitting around the table, having conversations, brainstorming, and leveraging the knowledge and experience that is out there, we take all of this and we put in something that we believe are pretty good guidelines that would help other customers benefit from our view. That's what we do in Zero Outage, right? And help other customers build zero outage environments. So that's what we do, and that's what I do. Just a quick introduction. I think I spoke already to why, but why people? I think it's evident, and it says on the screen also. People are the backbone and probably the most valuable asset of every company or every organization. But at the same time, they're also a massive risk, right, to a company because they are a point of failure. I know human being is perfect. So you need to build something around that to try and get them as perfect as possible when working in these environments. It's a fact that between 60 and 80% of outages are caused by human beings, right? And that is something we strive to reduce by some of the approaches we take. So the people element in Zero Outage, or in the people element of Zero Outage Industry Standard, we aim to build processes for companies so that they can effectively handle outages when they occur. But more importantly, is that we try to create and develop guiding principles that are aimed at avoiding outages altogether. Right? There is a saying, something like, I don't know, it takes 90 days to form a habit, or something to that extent. So if you do the same thing for 90 days, it will turn into a habit. And that is very true, and in a big corporation, that is in fact the case, right? And everything is driven by habits and the things we do. So we know that habits, if specific habits are driven by employees inside of companies, they can actually influence the culture of an organization as well, right? So by instilling specific behaviors into an organization, we strive to make zero outage a habit, right? So it's difficult, it takes a lot of dedication, but it's absolutely possible. So in the people section, or the people section addresses the human element of zero outage. And we take a holistic view of everything that we feel is required from a skills and competencies perspective. And that is why we've come up with something called the competency model. So here we go. So that's what it looks like. The competency model on the right here basically is a visual way for us to show which competencies are needed for people to successfully work in zero outage environments. Okay, so the model outlines what we believe is needed to meet zero outage criteria. And so as you can see, the people, or the human element, lives right in the center of that model, because people matter and they're most critical, but people by themselves, right, can't do anything. So we put something around that, right? And that's the recommended or the required competencies: methodical competencies, functional competencies, as well as interpersonal competencies. But even the competencies by themselves are nothing if you don't have a solid foundation, a stable foundation, right? And that is why an organizational environment comes into play here. So, so with the people, the competencies, and the organizational environment, right? We've come up with a so-called competency model, and I'm going to hand back to Michael now, who's going to give you all a rundown of what each of these competencies mean, what they're there for, and also touch on the organizational environment. And then I hand back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Klaus. We start with the methodical competency. The methodical competency encircles basic capabilities, what someone needs to perform in a certain work environment. That are simple stuff or simple capabilities like working with the standard business tools like Outlook, or being able to do your own time management on the other hand side. Be able to, for instance, if this is required, do your own simple project management or speak a certain language when this is the required business language in that organization. And of course, if you are part of a zero outage organization, you also have to know the zero outage principles and processes which applies in your organization. This capability, like in all other competencies, it's very important that the company understands exactly what is required from the employee and make sure that the required capabilities are trained, and also make sure that the employees are able to perform that required knowledge, especially in a zero outage environment. It sounds trivial, but if someone is not capable of, for an example, producing a proper Excel report for his environment, and then there is an error in a zero outage environment, then maybe not his functional, so his core competency has a problem, but the methodical competencies, and that has to then be detected and has to be trained, and the employee has to be given the opportunity to work on that. Companies have understood over the time that also the functional competence, the methodical competences are very important, and now provide from time to time and occasionally time management trainings or little project management trainings and so on and so forth, even language trainings if this is required. In a zero outage organization, we definitely need to have a fully structured approach also to that competencies, and have to be part of the organizational environment. But I will talk about that later. Coming to the functional competencies. Functional competencies describe the knowledge you need, the capabilities you need to do your job. So the security expert has to know security technologies, or a programmer needs to know the required programming languages. That is obvious. And support agent has to understand the technology he supports and also the required processes. This is in my opinion, this is in our opinion, the easiest part of the competency model, because the IT industry is very good in talking about technologies. I mean, every bigger supplier has their own certification, or almost every big supplier has their own certification process. You can take all kinds of tests and courses. You can study on universities all kinds of study courses which are IT related. So that is the easiest competence to describe, and this is where IT companies, I said, also good in. So they always describe what they need. If you read a job ad, we need someone who is capable to program in Java and in this and that, and in understands security technologies, blah blah blah. But also here it is important in a zero outage environment that it gets strictly defined what is required, that we test if our employees bring the required knowledge, and give them then the opportunity, if there is a gap somewhere, the opportunity to learn what is missing. That's very important to understand what we need and then see if it's there. Interpersonal competency is the next competency, and the interpersonal competency is defines the necessary social aspect and behavioral capabilities for working in a zero outage environment. To give you a few examples, as it is listed here on the slide, it is a sense of urgency. It is proactive work approach. It is clear, open, effective communication. It is the capability to work in teams, a sense for quality, being able to make decisions, but also adhere to processes, outcome-oriented thinking, learning from mistakes, and so on and so forth. The list is quite long. That will be definitely part of one of the next webinars where we go deeper into the different competencies and what else there in cycle. This is, in my opinion, the most important, but also the most difficult part of the competency model, because this is an area where we have not measured a lot. But for a zero outage environment, it is very important that we define exactly what we need, because not everyone needs the same interpersonal competencies. If you have someone working in a configuration area, he has to be very precise, very exact. He has to be willing to document. He has to strictly follow processes. But be able to, if he stumbles over a process problem, be able to talk about that, to alert his management about that. If someone works in a programming environment, he has to be far more creative, maybe, but also willing to build in zero outage, the idea of zero outage already in his product, the product he is producing. So you have a lot of different interpersonal competencies. I think the easiest one to describe is maybe someone who supports technology on the phone to customer or with other means. That person, it's good if this person likes to work with people. It does not make sense to put someone highly technical skilled in a position like that when he doesn't like to talk to people and doesn't like to do phone calls, for instance, as a simple example. And we are of the strong belief that it is possible, or we know that it's possible, that you can also measure such interpersonal competencies before you hire people or before you promote them out of the company into a zero outage environment, and that you choose the right people not only from a functional competency, but also from an interpersonal competency to make sure that that person fits in the team and that he has also all the requirements which is necessary to do this job in a zero outage adequate way. That is better for a zero outage environment, but it's also better for that person who gets promoted in such a position. About how to define what you need in the different competencies and how to measure them, possibilities to measure and to remeasure is subject of another webinar. That brings me to my last point, the organizational environment. If the organizational environment, I think that is obvious, is the basis of the zero outage people work stream or the zero outage environment. The company or the organization has to define that zero outage is required for a certain area. Then the organization has to decide what does zero outage for us mean actually. What encircles zero outage and what is not part of zero outage. Then define how that should look in that specific environment. Then provide the necessary organization and provide the necessary framework in terms of funding, of course, but also in terms of setting up the right people who are able to launch an employee selection program, for instance, to launch an employee trainee program. And very important, when I have put something in place, I need to have a review cycle, and that is even more important in a zero outage environment, that you review the output of the organization and the output of the people in a constant review cycle and see if we are still there where we want to be, if we can improve, and if there is anything what goes amiss and has to be fixed. So a constant review cycle has to be applied. A constant training for the people has to be available. And if it is detected that someone doesn't want to work in that area anymore, it is better you detect that beforehand and give that person the possibility to find a different job or different occupation in the organization than learn it the hard way. Right, so a review cycle in all aspects of zero outage is absolutely necessary, especially when you work with people. You can detect, if really worst comes to worst, if you look at the people and see how they feel and where they are, you can detect what we call an inner cancellation. So innere Kündigung would that be in German. Right. Having said that, that is was my last point, and I would like to hand over to Klaus again.
Thank you, Michael. So I think, well, no, I don't think. I hope that you had a very high level a look at what the people element in zero outage means and why that is important. I think Michael alluded to this already a few times, that in some of the upcoming webinars, we will go deep dives into what all of these historical and functional and all these competencies mean, and into the organizational company perspective, what's needed to be working in these environments. So I think stay posted, or we'll keep you posted. I think there will be some social media activity around when the next webinar on people is going to be.